Hey everyone, it's Lucky, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my draft analysis for Season 10 of the UPL. Now, this season we are doing a National Dex draft, but we aren't including any of the cut moves, so like no hidden power, no return, any of that. So, before I get into the draft analysis part, want to do a quick intro to what I've been going to do this time around. So, draft analysis, normally when people do them, it's kind of like the same thing where you go, round one, I picked this, and then talk a little bit about what mon you picked. And then round two, you picked this, and talk about things about that mon. And that's fine, and it's a good thing. I've done that in the past, nothing against it, but I wanted to try something a little bit different with my draft analysis this time around. So, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go over my team as a whole very briefly. Just say I picked this round, give like a quick 30-second overview of why I picked it, and then move on to the next one. They'll all be displayed at the same time, and that'll just give kind of quick overview so you know what all I picked. Then after that's done and I explain everything I picked, I'm going to go into kind of some cores from what I picked and how they work together. And I think that's going to be a more interesting way of going about it, a little bit of a better way of going about kind of showing how the team works as a whole rather than the individual parts. So let me know what you guys think of that. If you think that was something that was enjoyable, if this was a good new way to do that, or if you prefer just the old way of going back and doing it pick by pick, either let me know in the comments or go ahead and just tell me on Discord what you think, because I really appreciate the feedback on this. With that, let's get into the draft. So I had pick 6, and round 1, I decided to go with Tornadus T. That was going to be my pick all along. As soon as I got it, I knew I wanted Tornadus T if it fell to me. It just does so much for the team, great ability in Regenerator, and easy to build around. Pick 2, I ended up and grabbed Uniclus. Maybe it was a bit early to grab it in round 2, but I really wanted it with Tornadus T. For some reason, I just love that core, even though Uniclus doesn't necessarily known for its Regenerator. I just, for some reason, really like Tornadus and Uniclus together and really wanted those two. Pick 3 comes around, and a lot of the megas I had thought maybe I would take were gone, so I really couldn't risk losing Mega Altaria, so that's why I picked it. In addition, it is tiered as a Mega Tier 2, so I'm able to give myself a couple free points, which is an added bonus. Round 4, I was kind of expecting Tangrowth to be gone by the time it got back to me, but I was still hoping it would last, but it didn't. Luckily, I had a good backup in Amoonguss to complete the Regenerator core of Tornadus T, Reuniclus, and then Amoonguss, and I think they work really well together. Spore makes it so it's not completely passive, and I've never used Amoonguss before. That's another thing in this draft. I'm trying to draft things that I haven't used before, or at least not extensively. Besides the Tornadus T, the rest of the mons I wanted something I hadn't necessarily used before. So round 5 comes around, and I noticed that there was a Garchomp and a Zygarde in my division, so I wanted something to offensively check that. I picked Weavile. It was between Weavile and Mamoswine, but I had used Mamoswine recently and never used the Weavile. Usually it goes before I had a chance, so I was like, I'm going to jump on this. I'm going to take the Weavile. Round 6, I ended up picking Manaphy because even though it lost Hilgo, I still think it's a really good Pokemon and actually dropped around. So this is going to be kind of like my Suicune replacement. If you guys have watched any of my WPF videos, you know Suicune's doing really well for me. Suicune was still available, but I didn't want to pick the same thing twice. So that's why I picked Manaphy. Round 7, I picked Duraludon because steel types that I wanted to use were running a little bit low. Now it is kind of unique as a steel type, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I just maybe Duraludon's not super popular. Maybe it would have lasted, but I really wanted to make sure to grab it. Round 8, I actually ended up grabbing Mudsdale here, but we were allowed to make week 0 transactions, and later on I noticed a couple things. One, that I was missing a bit of hazard control, and 2, that Donphan was still available, so I was like, okay, we have week 0 trades. I'm going to go ahead and try to pick up Donphan later and then drop Mudsdale for something else. And that happened to be Excelgor. So round 9 comes around, and because of one thing about Duraludon as a steel type that doesn't resist fairy, I knew I needed some other fairy resist besides just Amoonguss, and that was a fire type. And so I picked Flareon because it has a high special defense and Wish, and it can be a decent, especially bulky check to fairies. Round 10 comes around, and I saw that Lycanroc Dusk actually fit the team really well, and I actually haven't used this form of Lycanroc, so that's exciting. In addition, it was a nice pick because this was a pick that sniped someone coming right back around, and then, as I said earlier, the last round, I picked up Donphan. So that's the team we're going to be rocking with for this season. Now, let's get a little bit into the cores. So, the first core I decided to draft the team around is somewhat obvious in the Regenerator core. As soon as I picked Tornadus T, I knew I wanted something that pairs well with it. And now Amoonguss and Reuniclus are both very slow. But Reuniclus especially hits really hard, and Amoonguss also isn't necessarily, it's not completely passive, as it gets a Spore to put opponents to sleep, and it has Clear Smog if they try to set up on me, and this will just be something that can allow me to pivot around, make it pretty easy to break if I decided to go with Regenerator on all 3 of these. Reuniclus covers Amoonguss's weaknesses fairly decently, at least the Psychic weakness, which you really want to try to hit it with. In addition, I can Assault Vest all of these. Assault Vest is a great item with Regenerator because it doesn't matter that you can't use any recovery moves. Amoonguss is Tornadus is the only one that doesn't get recovery move, but yeah, I'm just able to kind of pivot around, take some damage, regenerate it out, switch into better threats. So that's kind of the goal I wanted to build around then. Those were 3 of my first 4 picks. And I think this will make the team fairly hard to take down. And kind of the theme of the team a lot was trying to get a decent amount of bulky pivots around and able to get some chip, and so that my fast cleaners can come in and win at the end. Now, Tornadus isn't just a bulky pivot. I mean, it can do a ton of stuff. Like, it can go ahead and clean up at the end. It's a sweeper. It's got Nasty Plot this gen, which is really cool. I for sure won't be running the Heavy Duty Boots defog every single week, so that'll be fun to use. Next cores to go over are the type cores. So I have my Fantasy core of the Fairy, Dragon, Steel, and my Fire, Water, Grass core. So my Fantasy core is only consisting of 2 mons in Mega Altaria and Duraludon, because actually both of them each fill 2 types, being Altaria with the Dragon Fairy and Duraludon with the Steel Dragon. The only issue with one issue with Duraludon being a dragon type in addition to his steel is he doesn't resist dragon or fairy. However, Mega Altaria is immune to dragon, so that's as long as it's Mega Force, so that's good. Mega Altaria is also a really big setup threat, both defensively. You can run it with like Cotton Guard and especially offensive set, or even like Cotton Guard and DD. And so even though it did lose Return this gen, which makes it a little bit weaker, Body Slam is still hits pretty hard on this physical side, and then the special side I could always run Hyper Voice with Fire Blast, so that's good. Duraludon doesn't really get any setup. I think it might get Swords Dance, but it's not the fastest. Duraludon's one mon I might throughout the season end up switching out at some point for a different steel, but we'll see how it goes. It hits really hard. I think it's got a base 120 special attack, and so while it can't necessarily switch into fairies the best, it can do a lot of damage to them. In addition, when I picked it up, it was my only stealth rocker, and so that was really important to have. So yeah, and then the more core that's more balanced out and has every members of every type, and they all cover each other, are Manaphy, Amoonguss, and Flareon. Now this is a very bulky core, although Manaphy can still set up and do a lot of damage, and Flareon can also do damage if you have it be the Guts set. Because it has a base 130 attack, but overall it's more of a defensive fire, water, grass core, and even the fantasy core is fairly bulky, and the main point with this bulk is to prepare for some of my fast sweepers, which I will be going over next. But yeah, just basic cores that the type cores cover each other fairly well. So next, the whole thing that these picks will be trying to do is to try to take damage and deal some chip off and clear the way for one of my main 3 fast cleaners to come and finish up the game. We have Weavile, who Dark and Ice is a really good typing, has super fast speed, and if something does outspeed it, it's got Ice Shard, which I really wanted that strong priority, which is also something that Lycanroc Dust gets me in with its Tough Claws boosted Excel Rock. Both of these are fast physical sweepers, so if I need a special sweeper to come in, Tornadus T can do that. And like I've said a couple times, Tornadus T is really the glue to this team. It's one of the best mons in the format. It can do basically whatever you want it to. Like if I need it to be a Assault Death Pivot 1 week, I can do that. If I need it to be like a defogger with boots, it can be that. If I want it to be just hit really hard with Life Orb, I can do that, because you know what? I can hit a couple times with Life Orb, but then switch out and regen that out. So Life Orb Torn is actually one of my favorite sets. In addition, there's not a lot that I can outspeed it without a Scarf, so I can either put it on a Scarf on it and outspeed everything on the team, or just have it come in at the end without a Scarf. So as I've said the past, kind of with my other cores, the main goal for those cores is to kind of take hits and clear the way for one of these 3. Most weeks will probably be one of the main cleaners I could potentially bring. So another core theme that I have for this draft is the bulky setup sweepers, and this is something that I found that actually is becoming a bit of a staple of mine, is having these bulky setup sweepers. So a few seasons ago in the, UPL season 8, I had Corviknight, which Corviknight was excellent for me that season. It had a lot of kills. It was able to click bulk up and then just do damage. Likewise, this past season in WPF, I'm having Suicune currently leading the MVP race somehow. And so I've found that I enjoy having bulky setup sweepers that can set up with like Calm Mind or bulk up or whatever, and do damage that way. So the one thing I do have to worry about is when you run a more defensive setup set, you are more prone to getting crit. The more times you're in, the more hits you're taking, the more likely it is something could crit. But Reuniclus now has stored power, so the stored power Calm Mind Acid Armor set with Magic Guard could be great in a situation where my opponent doesn't have a Dark type. If it does have Dark type, I could always drop the Acid Armor for like Focus Blast. There's just lots of stuff that Reuniclus can do. It has good coverage, so yeah, overall Reuniclus I expect to be taking a bunch of hits, also dishing them out. Manaphy, like I said very early in the draft analysis, that's kind of my Suicune of this draft. Now, because it doesn't have Tail Glow, I feel like it'll be very similar in that it'll run the Calm Mindset a decent amount, but it can also just it's got base hundreds all across the board, so it can just function as my bulky water. I have used Suicune once before in the past, but this was um, early Gen 7 with Z moves, and while Manaphy could be good with a Z move with Z Rain Dance, I didn't use it the best, and I think that's because I tried to get it to do too much every week. And hopefully I'm thinking that without Tail Glow, um, that maybe limiting its sets could actually do better, and me knowing that its capabilities are somewhat limited, like it's not necessarily going to completely sweep through a team every week, might help it to do better. And then Mega Altaria is just something I'd wanted to try for a while. It doesn't necessarily have the setup sets that, like with the Calm Mind, that Rhinoclus or Manaphy do, but its defensive set, it does have the Cotton Guard that I could set up, and while that's not boosting my damage, it's making it so that Mega Altaria is pretty hard to take down. In addition, I could just easily EV it to that. I could run it with a lot of bulk EVs and set up that way. Just run it with bulk EVs and roast, and then just Dragon Dance up. And if I set up a couple Dragon Dances, it won't matter if I had a lot of attack EVs in it or not. So next up, we have my hazard game, and this involves both hazard setters as well as hazard removers. So I have 3 rock setters in Duraludon, Lycanroc, and Donphan, 1 spike setter in Excelgor, who also gets toxic spikes, and then my hazard removers are Donphan and Tornadus T are my main ones. Mega Altaria also gets defog, though I don't know how much I would actually run defog on it. It's kind of an option to pinch, but I didn't include it on here because it's really kind of a tertiary one. It's not a main one that I'm going to rely on every week for hazard control. And Donphan, and that reasoning where I was like, before I saw Donphan there and picked it up, I was like, I don't really want Tornadus T or Mega Altaria to have to defog every week. That's completely limiting their potential, and at that time I didn't really see any hazard removers I really liked that were left until I stumbled across Donphan, and I was like, you know what, I already picked a ground type, but I think having Donphan and then being able to pick up Excelgor and get the spikes access would be huge for this team, because like I said, I think as you're seeing a theme with a lot of the team, it's got a decent amount of bulk and then some fast cleaners. So hazards really help with stacking up the damage for that. In addition, I mean, Excelgor could actually do pretty decent offensively because it's so fast that I could run, Modest most weeks. And with Gen 8, we got the item Throat Spray, so I could run Modest with Throat Spray, Bug Buzz, with Unburden, and once I click the Bug Buzz, I get a +1 special attack, and then I also am able to get the Unburden speed boost. So that's my hazard game. That's going to try to both set up hazards and remove them from my side. Although this team is not bothered too much by hazards. The only thing weak to hazards is, well, I don't have any quad weaknesses. I have Flareon, I have Tornadus, who even before boots isn't really weak to rocks because I could just pivot out, and Altaria before it megas. I think that's it off the top of my head. There might be Excelgor, but Excelgor probably won't be switching in much anyways, so that's not a huge issue. So yeah, so the last thing I want to talk about when building this team is the speed tiers. That was also something that was important to me. As you can see, I have speed tiers are pretty well balanced out. There's a 20-point gap between Excelgor and Weavile, although that's so high that there's not a lot of mons in between those speeds, so that's fine. I mean, anything faster than Weavile, I think that's still a big enough gap that things in there can't necessarily. There's not much between like base 130s and base 145, so I'm pretty good on them having to still run or not being able to run Modest there. Then we jump down to 121 Tornadus T. That's a close speed gap. Then we have a pretty good speed gap between Tornadus T and Lycanroc. Also a good one between only 10 between Lycanroc and Manaphy. Then Manaphy from base 100 Manaphy, we go to 85 Duraludon, 80 Mega Altaria, then 65 Flareon, 50 Donphan, and then 30 with the Reuniclus and Amoonguss. So our largest speed gap is 20, have a decent amount of 15s, but that should be pretty good to make it so natures could be fun for opponents. They're going to have a hard time running the boosting natures, I think, because my speed tiers are so well balanced. And also, a good thing with this team, there's a decent amount of things that can go offensive or defensive. I mean, the main core of it. So, like, Selgor, you're not going to run it defensively. Weavile, you're not going to run defensively. And Lycanroc, you're not really going to run defensively. And then Amoonguss isn't really doing much offensively. But other than that, I mean, everything else can go either way. Like Tornadus T can be pretty bulky, or it can hit hard. Manaphy, same way. Duraludon can be bulky physically, especially not much, although I could run Assault Vest to make up for its low special defense. Same with Donphan, and Donphan's rocking a 130 base attack with good coverage, and it gets priority in Ice Shard, so that's an added bonus too. I have 3 priority users on the team. Mega Altaria, again, defensive or offensive. Same with Flareon, so a decent amount of my team can go offensive or defensive, so that's good. Have versatility, but also things that do their job really well. The one thing I would have maybe liked to have a bit more actual pivoting moves on this team. I only have Tornadus with U-turn, Manaphy with U-turn, and Selgor with U-turn plus Baton Pass in Flareon. I know maybe something else gets it that I'm not remembering, but might have to be doing more doubles than I would like, but that's okay. I mean, Regenerator with Amoonguss and Reuniclus just, I mean, helps. That's kind of a pseudo, having Regenerator is kind of a pseudo pivoting move, because I can just switch it in, take a hit, double out, and not really worry about taking damage. So that's the team. You guys can see that it's pretty bulky with a few big offensive threats. So that was kind of the goal of the team. Try to draft things I hadn't really played with much before, and hopefully it'll do good this season. So once again, let me know what you guys think about this slightly different draft analysis. If you like it, if you hated it, if you liked it okay and think there's some things that could improve, if you wanted to see more. But yeah, that's the team. Hopefully we'll be able to do good, make playoffs, maybe compete for a championship. And I will see you guys in coming weeks when I bring you my team builders and battles.